On my palette, I have Naphthol Red, Azo Yellow, Ultramarine Blue, Titanium White, and Raw Umber. I've already sketched out my drawing, and I'm going to start right here in the center of the sunrise where it's going to be the brightest. I mixed a small amount of titanium white with a small amount of yellow, working in crisscross motions and blending outward. Using the same mixture, I'm going to slowly add a hair amount of red at a time and work my way out from the center. What that will do was create a natural looking gradient in the sky. I've always heard pure white isn't actually the brightest. If you add a small amount of yellow, it will make it brighter. And that's why I've added a small amount of yellow to where the sun is. I'm working with a 1/2 inch flat synthetic brush. I like to use a flat brush to lay a lot of color down. The bigger the size, the more it can cover the canvas a lot faster, and the soft bristles allow me to lay the color down as well as blend a little bit. The reason I like to start with the sun is because I feel the dark can easily kill the lighter colors. So we start with the sun and work our way out. I'm going to speed up this part right here just to get through this a little bit faster. But all I am doing is using the same mixture. I just add a little bit of red to it the further I get from the sun. And that's how I create this beautiful natural gradient in the sky. So the further you get from the sun horizontally and vertically, the darker it is going to become. For example, up here at the top, I start to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to create a purple hue to darken that part of the sky a little bit more. I have this 1/4 inch mop brush, and I'm blending in all different directions to create a smooth transition. The one thing I always try to say is don't overblend. You don't need this absolutely perfectly blended sky. If you keep in a little bit of strokes, that just adds to it and makes it seem like there are distant clouds that are a bit different of color. Grabbing my scrumbler brush to paint these clouds, I've mixed ultramarine blue and naphthol red with a very small amount of raw umber. I add the raw umber because naphthol red and ultramarine blue will create this very rich violet hue and it won't look natural. So the umber kind of dulls down the purple to a more natural looking color. The more you mix your colors and play with them, the more familiar you'll get with them, and you'll start to realize how much of each color you'll need to create the color that you're going for. I switch back and forth between a scrumbler brush to add color and a soft synthetic brush to blend the bottom half of the clouds. There's really no right or wrong way to place these clouds. If you're struggling to figure out where to place them, just walk outside and look up at the clouds and see how they're formed. They're not all going to be big, bushy clouds. The closer you get to the viewer, which also means the higher up on the painting, the bigger they'll appear and the softer they'll appear. Adding clouds like this adds some contrast to the sky. It helps the sunrise to pop a little bit more. When you get closer to the horizon, they start to get a little lighter and thinner because there's much more of that atmospheric perspective between the viewer and the clouds. So if you want them to look realistic, it's good to add different types. Some wispy and thin, some very light, some very dark, some big and bushy. All types of clouds in a sky will just help to add to the realism. Clouds are very complex to paint, but don't let that intimidate you. It takes time and layers. If they don't look like you want them to, it just means that you haven't added enough layers. And if you feel like you're adding too many layers and you feel like you're starting to make mud when you blend, just put down your brushes and let your painting dry before coming back and adding more layers on top of it. Because the technique that I use is a wet and wet technique, I am using the same violet mixture with all the clouds, but as I pick up more of that lighter color from the background on my brush, I move down the painting to the horizon line and it automatically lightens up that color to make the perfect color for these far off distance clouds. It's just a matter of where you place your brush first to get all that dark hue off the bristles and before you start working your way down to the bottom half of the painting. After you have the base of your clouds down, I soften them up a little, especially the ones right here near the horizon, because you're not going to normally get really crisp clouds. Just like everything else that gets a little fuzzy the further away they get from the viewer. When you're blending, if you start to build up too much paint on your mop brush, I always have these shop rags where I wipe off the paint wherever I need it. And these are wonderful. All you gotta do is just wipe off the paint and then go right back into anything that you're blending. It's almost inevitable, whether you're using a makeup brush or a mop brush or any brush it is that you are to blend, you're going to end up putting hair in your painting. When that happens, don't worry, just try and either take them out with the brush or grab a little palette knife and carefully take out each strand that you see. And if it happens to scrape the paint up a little bit, just re-blend that area. Now that we have the base layer well established, I'm going to start refining them a little bit more. I have this little brush and I'm going to push the paint around here and there to smooth out anywhere I've missed and create sharper tops in some areas. After taking a step back, I felt that the sky was a little unbalanced. There were a lot of clouds in the top left corner, and the sun is also on the left, with not much on the right. So I went back in with that same purple color that we mixed using Naphthol Red and Ultramarine Blue with raw umber, and I'm adding a little bit of titanium white to that as well, and putting some more clouds up here in the right hand corner. What I'll do next is add a little bit of dark purple to the center of these clouds. Since this color is already lighter, I'm gonna go ahead and add some more of this color to the horizon. Softening these clouds up again very lightly, all I'm doing is touching the canvas with the very tip of the brush. The goal is not to push around the paint, but just to soften it up a little. When working with clouds, work from the back to the front. When you lay your clouds on top of one another, finish the cloud behind it first before moving on to paint the clouds closer. I made the one in front of this a little darker because it's getting shadowed by the one behind it. I'm going back behind it and just adding a little bit more shadow to the one behind so it doesn't look as flat, but mostly that one is finished. When I want to blend little areas, I'll grab a small round brush for more precision work. These little clouds that I like to put across the sun is just a personal preference I have always done. I feel like it creates a depth to the painting, so I've always put them something right near the sun to kind of push the sun further back in the background. If you do decide to add anything near the sun, you'll want to tint that object with a little bit of orange, because the sun tends to make it a little abstract to whatever is near the sun or right on top of the sun. In this case, I've added a little bit of orange clouds near the sunrise. Unlike most parts of the painting, I always work wet and wet in the sky, and that's simply because that will help everything blend and keep the sky nice and soft. That's one thing I do really love about oils. Unlike acrylics, oils allow you to blend easier because they stay wet longer. I tend to over lighten in the beginning, and as things start to form, I'll start to add more darks, which is what I'm going to start doing with these clouds. So now it's been a couple days, and I've let the sky dry a little bit while I've worked on the rest of the painting, which is why you can see the mountains and the grass coming together. I'm going to go ahead and brighten up the center of the sun. To get that brightest effect, the paint needs to extrude off the canvas so the light can bounce off of it. So grab a glob of the white and lay a thick amount right in the middle of the sun and blend outward just a little bit to help smooth it all together. I'm also going to add highlights to the underside of some of these clouds using the same mixture that we just used on the sun. We're using such a small amount that it's almost like there isn't anything there, but your eye will pick up that the bottom half of those clouds, or the bottom part, is a little bit lighter, showing that there is a reflection from the sun off of them. Add the shadows to the clouds now. I'm thinking about how the sun is hitting the clouds and where the thickest part of the clouds would be. I still have the purple that we made for the base layer and just darkened it up just a little bit by not adding so much white to the mixture. The thickest part is normally always in the center of the cloud because it's where it has the most density and the sun can't penetrate through most of that, so it remains shadowed. I constantly twist my brush so you don't get the same brush stroke throughout the painting. If you use the same brush like I do, it can create a pattern. To avoid that, we just twist the brush back and forth. And there you have it. The sky is now finished. Now on to the pebbles and the rest of the painting. We'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.